A mystery lasting more than 3,200 years, thanks to the courage and intuition of one man, became the greatest archaeological discovery of the century. A forgotten pharaoh took his rightful place in history. The boy king, Tutankhamun.
The discovery of the tomb of Tutankhamun was the most important discovery ever happened in history. The discovery happened on November 4th, 1922, when Howard Carter was excavating in the valley and the water boy found the entrance, and Howard Carter came, looked at the entrance, and he found the tomb that he was searching for 5 years.
On the 4th of November 1922, the English archaeologist Howard Carter unearthed the 16 steps of the stairway which led to Tutankhamun's tomb. The tomb was intact. Nobody had yet violated it. But only 22 days later did Carter realize the importance of his discovery.
The 26th of November was the crucial day, the best day of my life, such that I could never hope to live another one like it. Halfway through the afternoon, about 10 meters after the first door, a second one was discovered. The seal markings here were less clear, but Tutankhamun's seal and that of the royal necropolis were still distinguishable. Soon all would be clarified. It was sufficient to break down the walled door to find the answers to all our questions. Gradually, with what seemed to us to be exasperatingly slow, all the rubble covering the lower part of the door was cleared away, and finally the ceiling wall became entirely visible. This was the decisive moment.
Facing this wall, perhaps Howard Carter didn't even imagine to be one step away from the archaeological discovery of the 20th century, an event that would have made his name immortal, together with that of the pharaoh whom he was about to bring to light, Tutankhamun. Tutankhamun, up to that moment, a name forgotten over the centuries, a pharaoh who did not live long enough to leave a tangible sign of his earthly life, a pharaoh whose name did not even appear in the royal lists of the dynasties of ancient Egypt. Such lists, in fact, were interrupted from Amenhotep III until Horemheb, omitting the names of 4 sovereigns, the so-called heretic pharaohs, Akhenaten, Smenkhare, Ai, and of course Tutankhamun.
Tutankhamun was one of the kings of the 18th dynasty, and he was the youngest king. He died with the age of 18 or 19, and it became a kind of a secret or a mystery. How did he die?
The boy pharaoh lived and reigned in one of the most controversial periods of Egyptian history. He became king shortly after the death of Akhenaten, the sovereign who carried out a social, political, and religious revolution without precedent. The Egyptian pantheon was replaced by a unique god, Aten, the sun, for whom Akhenaten had an entire city constructed, Tel El Amarna, and closed all the temples dedicated to all the other gods. Upon the death of this pharaoh, a turbulent period followed, during which the priests of Amun, the primordial god, succeeded in bringing the situation back to normal.
Tutankhamun brought the religious center of the country back to Karnak, and many of the work that Akhenaten had done to change to the worship of the Aten and to proscribe the worship of Amun-Re was undone. The religious center moved back here. Amun-Re became the most important god again. Akhenaten's temples were dismantled and again reused in other monuments. What's nice about that is that they've been preserved, unfortunately, in fragments.
In the year 1339 BC, With the support of the same priests, Tutankhamun became pharaoh when he was only 9 years old. Before the discovery of his tomb, named as KV62, very little was known about the young king. Today, instead, he is known much more than any other pharaoh of ancient Egypt. Yet there are some aspects of his life that still remain shrouded in mystery, such as the identity of his parents.
If you look at the family of Tutankhamun, actually, as I said before, there is some scholars believe that his father was Amenhotep III. I really do believe that his father was Akhenaten. His mother, I believe she was Kia, but some people still believe it could be Nefertiti. We really do not know.
Even without existing archaeological evidence that provides definite answers on the ancestry of Tutankhamun, it seems anyway certain that he was born and lived his early life at Tel El Amarna. This hypothesis is suggested by several facts. In the first place, his name during the first years of his life was Tutankhaten, that is, the living image of Aten. The royal tomb of Amarna, as well, has a wall with the representation of the funeral of Akhenaten, one of the daughters of Akhenaten and Nefertiti. According to one theory, Akhenaten died in childbirth, giving birth in fact to Tutankhaten, represented as a baby in the arms of a foster mother. According to some experts, however, the boy pharaoh was the son-in-law of Akhenaten because he married one of the daughters of the heretic pharaoh and Nefertiti. However, there is another theory that seems the most probable.
We think that he was the son of Akhenaten. Let's say 90%. All the evidence we have can tell us that he was one of the children of Akhenaten. We know that Akhenaten had only 6 daughters from the very famous queen Nefertiti, and he didn't have any son from Nefertiti. That's why he had a secondary wife. Her name was Kia, and Kia bore that son for Akhenaten.
The young Tutankhaten, it seemed, married his stepsister. The only certainty is that the boy was crowned at Tel El Amarna, but quickly abandoned that city to return to Thebes, where he changed his name to Tutankhamun, the living image of Amun.
Tutankhamun's occupation of the city must have been quite short. No changes to the names in the temples were made to record his presence, and the highest year date on any document we have from here, they're mainly jar labels, is to a year 2. And the next thing we know is that Tutankhamun is at Memphis, issuing a decree which rejects, by implication, all that Akhenaten has stood for, all that he has done, and is restoring the temples. And in that decree, one knows that the Amarna period is over. And it must be just a very small number of years between Akhenaten's death and this formal rejection by Tutankhamun. That is the interval that represents the end of the Amarna period, maybe no more than 3 or 4 years.
The first task facing the extremely young pharaoh was to reintroduce the cult of Amun.
This land was plagued by evil. The sanctuary of the gods was falling into ruins. I have prayed the gods and the goddesses to help me, but they have not listened to me. I have worked constantly to regain their favor. When I arrived, I found their temples destroyed, the sacred places profaned, and the courtyards covered with weeds. I have rebuilt their sanctuaries, I have renovated the temples, and I have rendered them many very precious gifts. I have created the statues of the gods in gold, and have inlaid them with lapis lazuli and many precious stones.
The reintroduction of the cult of Amun was a very important decision that Tutankhamun could not take on his own.
After Akhenaten died and the court returned to Thebes, the cult of Amun-Re again became extremely powerful.
The very young age of Tutankhamun permitted the priests of Amun to exercise their influence on him and to reappropriate that power that had been taken away from them by Akhenaten. This restoration was followed by the return to Thebes as the religious capital of the realm. In the great temple complex of Amun-Ra at Karnak, he had built the Grand Avenue flanked by sphinxes with ram's heads, which connected the temple of Amun with that of Mut, his divine wife. In addition, he reintroduced the antique feast of Opet, that was the most solemn celebration of the devotion to the Theban triad, formed by Amun, Mut, and Khonsu. At Luxor, instead, he had erected a statue of himself with his own wife, later credited to Ramses II. However, it is not far from the statue that the activity of Tutankhamun in public works reached its climax.
We're standing in the processional colonnade of the Luxor Temple, which had been begun under Amenhotep III and then abandoned under Akhenaten. This stands as testimony to Tutankhamun's devotion to Amun-Re as he completed much of its beautiful decoration.
In spite of his great fame, Tutankhamun created very little. His reign lasted only 10 years. He died before he was 20. His was a sudden death and took all by surprise, including those who were working on the construction of his tomb. The place for his eternal sleep, in fact, was still not ready when the boy king died, and his embalmed body was hastily placed in another resting place, not worthy of welcoming a king. In fact, it is a rather small burial place, formed by a short corridor which leads to an antechamber in front of a small area called Annex, in which were conserved the objects and the food of which the pharaoh would have need in the netherworld. From the antechamber, the burial chamber and the small treasury are reachable. Overall, the tomb is of modest dimensions, not much more than 100 square meters, but it is one of the most fascinating and important places associated with Egyptian history. The fame of Tutankhamun, in fact, really results from the discovery of his tomb, the only one found not violated in the Valley of the Kings, thanks to the tenacity and the intuition of Howard Carter. From 1907, Carter excavated in the Valley of the Kings, financed by George Edward Herbert, Earl of Carnarvon, but for many years the excavations had not produced the expected results. Only after years of research, finally on the 4th of November 1922, the English archaeologist found what he was looking for.
And this day, Carter came to the site and he found all the workmen silent, no talking, and the foreman of the workmen came to him and told him, "We found something you should see." And he came with him to this site and to this place, and he showed him the first step to this tomb. And that time, Carter did not know that he would find the tomb of Tutankhamun, but he was sure that he found something so important finally in the Valley of the Kings. So he began to follow the steps down to the tomb. After he finished the cleaning of this staircase, he came to this entrance and he found that it is plastered and it has the seals of the necropolis of the Valley of the Kings. At that time, according to James Henry Breasted, Carter called him to read together the name which in these seals impressions, and they found that this is the seals with the cartouches of Tutankhamun. So he began to recognize that this is the tomb of Tutankhamun. But he found also 2 seals. Seemed that the tomb was opened after the period of Tutankhamun. So he had some doubts that the tomb was robbed in antiquity. So, you know, these 2 seals in this sealed door gave him some doubts about if the tomb was intact or no. But he continued to excavate, and he sent to Lord Carnarvon to come to join him in this discovery. So Lord Carnarvon came until he finished this corridor and reached to the other entrance. Until he came here, all this entrance was closed and sealed also with the names of Tutankhamun. And here in this spot, Lord Carnarvon joined him. And they began to break down these seals or this door to see what's inside it. And Carter light a candle to see what's inside. And Lord Carnarvon asked him, "What do you see? What do you see?" And he said, "I see the glimpse of the gold inside this tomb." It means that the tomb was intact in that time when they first saw it. And he found also with Lord Carnarvon for the first time that the tomb is full of objects, thousands and thousands of objects. The tomb was stuck with objects. So it was a great moment for them. This what they said together is now in every book of Egyptology, because this was a great moment for the history of Egyptology, and also it was the first time they found an intact tomb in the Valley of the Kings. When Carter finished opening the doorway of this chamber or antechamber, he found that this room is stuck of thousands and thousands of objects. Most of them are gilded and made of precious and semi-precious stones, and everything was arranged and was wrapped very well, preparing to accompany the king in his journey in the afterlife. In 1927, they began to work toward the west until they reached here. A big wall was here. There was a big wall, and there was an entrance sealed with the cartouches of Tutankhamun.
Carter had arrived at a crucial point. The antechamber was practically cleared, and he was now able to break down the wall that still separated him from the burial chamber, where he hoped to find the mummy of the pharaoh still intact.
With extreme care, I broke down the plaster and began to pull out the small stones that formed the upper layer of the wall. The desire to stop and glance inside was irresistible, and when, after about 10 minutes, the hole was large enough to look inside, I inserted an electric torch. Its light revealed to me an astounding spectacle.
The 20 people who were in the tomb with Carter asked him if he could see anything, and the archaeologist replied, "Yes, wonderful things."
At about a meter from the door, stretched in every direction, enough to block the entrance of the chamber, was erected what was a wall of solid gold.
He found the glimpse of the gold shining in his face, because the shrines, the wooden gilded shrines which was covering the sarcophagus of the king, was just behind or beyond this wall, and they began to lift the shrines, 6 shrines systematically, step by step, until they reached this beautiful quartzite sarcophagus. And after that, it took time from him to find the scaffolds to lift the lid of the sarcophagus. Once he lifted the lid of the sarcophagus, he began to find the outer sarcophagus, which was made of solid gold. Then after he opened it, he found another sarcophagus there, which was made of gilded wood with gilded gold. And when he lifted, he faced the mummy itself.
In spite of the reduced dimensions, the tomb conserves representations which have much to tell.
Look from the beginning. You can see the funeral. They're bringing the mummy Tutankhamun in a shrine. And they are bringing the mummy to the tomb. And after that, you have the high priest, who became the king of Egypt, opening the mouth of Tutankhamun as Osiris, telling him, I open your mouth, then you can eat. I open your eyes, then you can see. I open your nose, then you can smell in the afterlife, and you become a king. And after that, you have seen of Tutankhamun with goddesses, especially Hathor, the goddess of beauty and love, and Osiris. Look, they're holding him with love and affection. Osiris telling him, come to my kingdom. You become one of us. You became a god. And Hathor, as Isis, his mother, is holding him with love. And another one scene and 1 hour from the book of the Imidwat, what is in the netherworld. Then we see Anubis is also blessing Tutankhamun. Very little scenes, but very important, can show to us that Osiris accepted King Tut, who's resting under the golden coffins to live for eternity.
The news of the discovery went rapidly round the world and was made even more sensational by a presumed curse which seemed to strike those who had participated in it. It seems, in fact, that in the burial chamber was found an earthenware tablet that later disappeared, with an explicit and worrying inscription.
The wings of death will strike whoever disturbs the sleep of the pharaoh.
The news items at the time reported different versions of the curse, but all were in agreement in blaming any unfortunate event on the anger of the pharaoh, whose eternal sleep had been disturbed after almost 33 centuries. What gave birth to the legend was the unfortunate sudden death of Lord Akhenaten a few months after the discovery. In the following years, different accidents happened to some of the people associated, even indirectly, with those who took part in opening the tomb. For this reason, many newspapers realized that the curse was more fascinating news than the discovery itself, and contributed to fostering it by collecting every rumor. Still today, the curse continues to make news.
They took the mummy and I put it inside the CAT scan machine. What's amazing, after I put the body of King Tut inside the CAT scan machine, the machine was stopped. They began to think there is something could be called the curse of the pharaohs, or the curse of Tutankhamun. Why the machine stopped?
In spite of the fact that the tomb was of limited size, 5,398 gold and silver objects were packed into it. The greatest treasure ever discovered.
These beautiful artifacts at the Cairo Museum capture the hearts of everyone. Each artifact can tell us the story, his diet. He loved beer. We had many jars of beers. He was interested in eating. We had many evidence about the food and the diet that he ate. The tomb can teach us a lot really about this golden boy. Ruled for a short period of time, but it was the time of the golden age.
Tens of finely worked alabaster vases and animals were recovered. The treasury, for the most part, was occupied by a gold reliquary that was protecting the 4 canopic jars in alabaster containing the internal organs of the young pharaoh. 3 splendid funeral bedheads in gilded wood occupied an entire wall of the antechamber, where over 700 objects were recovered. Among these, a splendid golden throne with one of the most rare representations of Tutankhamun with his principal wife, Akhenaten. The royal couple is represented in a moment of great intimacy, with the wife who spreads a perfumed ointment on the sovereign's body. The two young people are represented with only one sandal on their feet, a demonstration of the eternal love that they had sworn, both in good times, represented by the foot with the sandal, and in bad, referring to the barefoot.
We have a very small shrine, gilded shrine. That shrine is covered with wonderful and beautiful scenes of Tutankhamun and his young wife in different poses. So these objects we have here are showing us that both were really in love, in spite of the fact that they were very, very young when they got married.
Tutankhamun married Akhenaten shortly before being crowned at only 9 years of age, and with the passing of the years, their love became great.
They were in love. Everything in the tomb can show this. It's shown in the objects. The throne, go to the Cairo Museum, and you look at her, she's leaning on him, touching. When he died, she put that flower. And we know he had no children, actually. The only evidence that we have is the fetus that shows that maybe he had two fetus. They were born, died like this. And we are hoping that we will take some samples for DNA between them and Tutankhamun to find out the relationship between them and King Tut.
But of all the objects recovered in the tomb, absolutely the most precious were recovered in the burial chamber. The body of the pharaoh was protected by 4 shrines in gilded wood, one inside the other. Inside them, a large sarcophagus in quartzite contained another 3 sarcophagi, the first 2 also in gilded wood, and the third in pure gold.
The lid was raised using the gilded handles, and the mummy of the pharaoh appeared. More than 3,000 years had passed since human eyes had looked upon the inside of that coffin of solid gold, and time, in proportion to the brevity of human life, seemed to lose any common perspective. Before our eyes, finally, was laying all that remained of the young pharaoh, who up until now, for us, had only been the shadow of a name.
The face of the mummy was protected by a wonderful pure gold mask that reproposed the physiognomy of the pharaoh.
The most beautiful object on earth, the golden mask, that I can feel it's talking. I can feel when I look at it, the face and the eyes as if it's alive.
On the back of the mask, a verse of the text of the sarcophagi was engraved that had to accompany the journey of the pharaoh in the afterlife.
Hail to you, you who are kindly of countenance, owner of eyes which see, whom Anubis knit together, whom Ta-Sokar exalted, to whom Shu gave the supports, kindly of countenance among the gods, whom Re gave to Osiris for the secret thing which was done against him in order to end the injury by Seth against him. May you make him to be a spirit. May you subdue his foes for him. May you guide him to the fair places of the realm of the dead. May you smite the confederacy of Seth for him. That I be one who is enduring. Enduring is what has been commanded, even enduring like Re, forever.
To remove the mask from the face of the pharaoh was not an easy task, and Carter became aware of this very quickly.
He tried to take the mask out. He couldn't, because the mask was completely tied on the body of the mummy. He had to take the mummy out from the tomb, put it under the sun. It never melted. He could not take the mask out. Then he took the mummy inside the tomb of Seti II, and they brought tools with fire, and they took the golden mask out, and this is how Howard Carter damaged the mummy completely to 18 pieces.
The activities of Carter and the following studies on it have left the mummy in a disastrous state. In recent years, many steps have been taken in order to safeguard its state of conservation.
I looked at the body, I said, I have to save this man. I have to save this golden boy, because the breathing of the people who enter inside and the dust can damage the mummy more. And that's why I came in November 4th of 2007, the same day that the tomb was found 85 years ago. You cannot believe. The valley was full of hundreds of reporters from everywhere. The golden boy attracted everyone. And we designed this showcase in Germany, and I took the mummy from the sarcophagus and I put it here. The only good thing that people can see, they can see the face and the feet. And underneath, you can see they control humidity and heat. Then we can save this mummy for millions of years.
The examinations have given surprising results, above all regarding one of the more obscure mysteries relating to the figure of Tutankhamun, the real cause of his sudden death. For decades, the most accredited theory was that of homicide. But today, the analyses carried out by the Supreme Council of Antiquities with the most advanced technological means have demonstrated that he died as the result of a simple accident.
We discovered that he was not killed as the people thought in the last half or maybe in the last century. People thought that he was killed because after some investigations at that time, they found a kind of a wound in his skull, but this doesn't cause any death.
We found that he was not murdered. Because that hole in the back of the head, the CAT scan machine showed that was made in Dynasty 18 by the pharaohs, who made the mummification to put the liquid inside the body. And I brought the mummy back, and I did announce that King Tut died in an accident because we found a fracture in the left leg. And that fracture was an accident happened to the golden boy one day before he died. But what kind of an accident? No one really can know anything about that.
Yet up until that moment, it was thought that the circumstances of his death were very different. In 1968, the mummy was examined with X-rays. The results showed some suspicious stains at the height of the head. It was in this way that the theories of a plot and homicide took shape.
There have been a number of theories as to how Tutankhamun died. One of the most popular was that he was killed by a blow to the back of the head. This was based mainly on a rather fuzzy X-ray that was taken a while ago. And from this fuzzy X-ray was built up a theory about how he was murdered, possibly by one of his advisors, or another of his advisors, Horemheb.
Why in particular were and Horemheb the principal suspects of this crime? Who were these two men? Who according to some theories was the father of Nefertiti, was responsible for important duties during the reign of Akhenaten and was a member of the Regency Council that governed Egypt before Tutankhamun became pharaoh. The works of the construction of his tomb were initiated at Tel El Amarna, but were never concluded because with the death of the young king, the situation changed. Akhenaten did not want to marry any of the pretenders to the throne. she wrote to the king of the Hittites.
My husband is dead, and I have been told that you have sons of adult age. Send me one of them, and I will make him my consort, and he will reign over Egypt.
The Hittite sovereign consented and sent to the queen one of his sons. The prince, however, never arrived at the court of Thebes. He was killed during his journey towards Egypt by some assassin sent, perhaps by Ai. According to some theories, Akhenaten married the old pretender. According to others, she did not, and nothing further is known of her. The only certainty is that Ai, even though he was not of royal blood, became the 11th pharaoh of the 18th dynasty. At 70 years of age, he succeeded in this way in satisfying his greatest ambition. Ai built himself a splendid tomb in the Valley of the Kings, the KV-23, where he was buried on his death, only 4 years after his access to the throne. His successor was Horemheb, who, like Ai, became pharaoh while not being of royal blood. He was a general and one of the most important men at the time of the end of the 18th dynasty. He participated in the Regency Council that elected the boy Tutankhamun to be pharaoh, and was one of those that struggled for power at the death of the same. Also for Horemheb, 2 tombs are conserved. Before he became king, he had already started the construction of a magnificent tomb in the ancient necropolis of Saqqara.
Horemheb prepared for him a tomb in Saqqara, in Memphis necropolis. Tomb which became bigger and bigger with courtyards, with new pylons. When he became a king, he had to make a choice. This tomb couldn't work well for the new king because the kings were buried in the Valley of the Kings, in Thebes, in Luxor. So I, when he became king, prepared for him a tomb in Thebes. By the way, I had maybe a tomb in Saqqara also, still to be discovered. And Horemheb, it's the same. He made a beautiful tomb for him in the Valley of the Kings.
The tomb of Horemheb in the Valley of the Kings, denominated KV-57, seems to be unfinished. The walls of the funeral chamber, in fact, are decorated with scenes in relief left in various stages of completion. However, they are very useful in understanding the process which the artists employed to obtain this type of decoration. Overall, the tomb of Horemheb is one of the largest in all the Valley of the Kings, and it is really twice the size of that of his predecessor Ai, the scheming courtier who became pharaoh on the death of Tutankhamun. But really, the tomb of Ai hides another further mystery. In fact, it seems it was originally designed for Tutankhamun, but on the sudden death of the young pharaoh, the ancient vizier would have buried him in the tomb destined for himself, because it was now finished. By sheer chance, it was exactly this tomb, the KV-62, which remained not violated for over 3,200 years. If there had not been a similar set of circumstances, today, perhaps it would not be Tutankhamun, the most famous pharaoh in history. And it would not be his mummy, recently exposed in a glass showcase in the most famous tomb in the world. Today, it is possible to admire the face of the young pharaoh, a face that, in spite of everything, still hides many secrets.
soon will compare the DNA of the golden boy with the skeleton of Akhenaten, and will be able to discover the other family of Tutankhamun. The golden boy will never stop his mystery, but I always say that the mystery and the magic of Tutankhamun will never end. It will continue.
The mystery of the life of Tutankhamun still escapes us. The shadows move, but the darkness never clears completely.